1,000 volunteers. Almost all of them had no training, no discipline, no drill. They had so little ammo, some of them only had 10 rounds each, and they were on their way to take over all of Sicily. Once they'd taken Sicily, they were going for Naples and eventually Rome. In 1860, a revolt began in Sicily. Before the revolt, the Sicilians had asked a guy called Garibaldi, who was a general, to come down and take command of the revolt. Garibaldi had agreed to do so only if there was already an active revolt going on for him to take command of. Now there was an active revolt going on for him to take command of, so off he went. Him and his 1,000 volunteers set off for Sicily and landed in the westernmost point of the island. They weren't even soldiers, they were guys that got loaded onto a boat and they had almost no ammo. Like, they had the cheapest muskets money could buy. Meanwhile, they were facing 25,000 men. So imagine you're the defenders, serving the kingdom of two Sicilies, and you have almost 25,000 men to stop the most pathetic invasion in the world. What's the first thing you do? Well, the first thing they did was call for reinforcements. 3 to 4 battalions were delivered by sea. Although in fairness, Garibaldi was here to take command of a rebellion that was already going on, therefore he had a lot more troops than it looked, he just hadn't got them yet. Rebels and new volunteers from around the countryside swelled Garibaldi's force up to 2,000 men. Meanwhile, the defenders dispatched 3,000 men, along with some cavalry and artillery support, to deal with them. However, these numbers, again, make Garibaldi seem stronger than he actually is. Garibaldi did not have an army, he had a mob with guns. He took 1,200 of his men and launched an uphill attack on 2,000 Bourbon troops at Catafimi. Remember how I said that Garibaldi had so little ammo, some of his men just had 10 bullets each? Well, wouldn't it be funny if it was the defenders that ended up running out of ammunition? Because you're right, it was the defenders that ended up running out of ammunition. Garibaldi ordered his men to use their bullets as sparingly as possible. Meanwhile, some of the Bourbon troops ran out of ammunition and started throwing stones. Garibaldi stood up in the middle of the battlefield with a sword, said, "Come on, they are throwing stones, their ammunition is spent." And then he led his entire army up the hill and won the battle. Now his force had swelled to 4,000 men, due to new volunteers and rebels joining, and now he was about to assault the city of Palermo. The city defended by 20,000 men. He launched his attack and things went terribly. Pretty soon, it looks like he was on the verge of defeat. He was almost out of ammo. It would have taken about a day for the Neapolitan troops to destroy his force. A British ship came along and offered their flagship as a place for negotiations. Garibaldi unsurprisingly accepted this, and an armistice was immediately signed. With negotiations going on, it looked like Garibaldi's invasion of Sicily had failed, and it honestly shouldn't have lasted as long as it did. But while negotiations were going on, something happened, and nobody knows why it happened. Perhaps the general in charge of defending the city of Palermo wondered if there was about to be a revolt that was going to overthrow him. Perhaps he thought that Garibaldi's force was larger than it actually was. Perhaps he thought the British was about to intervene against him. Word on the street even said he got paid. Bribed by either the British or paid by Garibaldi. Regardless of why he chose to do this, he withdrew his entire force from the city and gave it up to Garibaldi. So now Garibaldi has just taken less than 4,000 men, assaulted a city defended by 20,000 men, and won. But either way, the people of the island clearly didn't think it was luck, because everybody started joining his force, and his force swelled to 17,000. And of those 17,000, 2,500 of them were a bunch of new volunteers that had just arrived from Piedmont. So at this point, Garibaldi divided his force into 3 groups. 2 groups went south to capture Syracuse and Catania, respectively. He went east to capture Messina. Along the way, a force of 4,500 men tried to intercept his force of 4,000 men. During the battle, and I'm not sure if I believe this story, it could be a story that was just exaggerated to make Garibaldi look good, but supposedly what happened is Garibaldi and like 2 other people got cut off behind a dozen cavalry and somehow fended them off. Either way, the invaders won the battle and the last 3 defending troops were forced back into a fortress. The Neapolitan government wanted to send reinforcements, but the navy refused to cooperate, and without the navy on side there was no real chance of salvaging the situation. So instead they just evacuated it, which is crazy because if the navy's refusing to cooperate, then that means that Garibaldi's fleet of like 3 civilian ships with cannons loaded onto them has somehow gained sea superiority around Sicily. Anyway, Catania held out under siege for 15 days until they escaped back to Messina. Pretty soon after that, Garibaldi took Messina as well. But wait a minute, I hear you ask. The title of this video is How to Take Over Italy with 1,000 Men. All this guy's done is take over Sicily. As you can see, there's probably a couple minutes left of the video. Do you know why? As I mentioned earlier, their final goal wasn't Messina, it was Rome. Heck, they had already reduced the number of Sicilies in the Kingdom of Two Sicilies to 0. Garibaldi's army was 40 times what it had been. He landed with 3,700 of those 40,000 men in Sicily. And due to a combination of reinforcements from Sicily and, well, new recruits recruited from the local population, Garibaldi pretty soon had 20,000 men ready to giving Italy a stubbed toe. So he was only outnumbered 4-1, which was actually a better situation than he had been in. Although here's the thing, that 4-1 was only on paper. The army of the Kingdom of Two Sicilies was not that loyal to the king, if at all. Many of the units either deserted or outright defected, and rarely did they offer any significant resistance. There were a couple of times when they tried to put up a fight, but they were never able to defeat the invading army. Meanwhile, a revolution began in the city of Potenza as the region of Basilica, I think? Basilicata? Whatever. As a revolution began in that location, which declared itself a part of the Kingdom of Italy, a kingdom which didn't really exist yet. They declared themselves under the rule of the King of Piedmont, which they recognised as the Kingdom of Italy. Anyway, Garibaldi and the rebels were able to take down what was left of the army of the Kingdom of Two Sicilies and march into Naples. The king didn't even bother defending his capital. He actually withdrew his army and instead faced them at the Battle of Volturno, where 28,000 of the king's men fought 20,000 of Garibaldi's men. They attempted a double envelopment of Garibaldi's men. Garibaldi won, and the last few troops of the Kingdom of Two Sicilies fell back to a fortress, which was besieged, and they held out for a year before they taken it. I should mention that at the final battle of Geta, which was of course the last stand of the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, the defenders outnumbered the attackers significantly, in guns, ships, and men. They even had naval reinforcements from Spain and France. Meanwhile, at the exact same time that Garibaldi was taking over the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, the Kingdom of Piedmont Sardinia invaded the Papal States and pushed all the way to the border of Naples. Anyway, there was a vote on whether or not they should unite Naples with Piedmont to create the Kingdom of Italy, and the vote came out yes, and so now Italy was a kingdom. However, Rome and Venice were still not a part of the country. Ooh, remember how I said earlier that the odds of Garibaldi winning was so insultingly low? Yes! Yeah, turns out I'm going to make a video of all the times where Italy, on paper, should have been prevented from existing, but by miracle of miracles, it managed to exist, and there was a lot more examples than what I've mentioned in this video, so click on that video right there.